What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Altitude Show. I'm your host, Dave Brinker. This is Elevation Journal number 17, and it is the week of 4th of July. I'm pretty happy to have a couple days off here, sort of. I'm obviously out in my studio recording podcasts, but it's all good. The Altitude Show is brought to you by Mountain Tough Fitness. Mountain Tough has changed my life, mentally and physically. I was just not living up to my fitness dreams. I wasn't doing enough. And I thought I was just going to the gym randomly and running randomly and hiking randomly and doing all these things. But now that I have structure in my workout schedule, it is totally game changing. And Mountain Tough does all the work for me. All I got to do is log onto the app every day, or 3 to 4 times a week is really what I do it. And I log on and I go to the PDF of that day's workout, and I either print it out, take it to the gym with me, or I just have it on my phone and I work through it. On the days I don't have as much time, that's what the preseason 2.0 program. On the days I don't have as much time, I do their minimal gear dailies, which are awesome. Highly recommend them. They will kick your butt. Regardless of what you do, this is a science-based, functional approach to getting people prepared for the mountains. It doesn't really matter what you're doing in the mountains. You don't have to be a hunter necessarily, but if you are a hunter, highly recommend it. And I'd recommend doing it now. We got about a month and 30 days until most archery elk seasons start out west. So go find the app on the App Store, Mountain Tough. Use my code Dave for 10% off a subscription, or you go to mountaintough.com/Dave, do the same thing. Use my code Dave for a 10% off on your subscription. All right. So over the last couple weeks, I have had pretty elk heavy podcasts out there. The first one was with Corey Ford from Angry Spike Productions, and this week it was Corey Jacobson. The reason I'm doing that is because my whole life, elk hunting has been my main thing. My dad started taking me when I couldn't even walk. So I thought, with a couple months out, let's just have as many elk hunters on here as possible that I respect and learn as much as we can and kind of get amped up for the season. I will be launching other podcasts in between some of these, but for the next 6 weeks, it's going to be pretty elk hunting heavy. So I apologize if that doesn't interest you, but I think a lot of you, it does. So that's why we're doing it, is to learn from the best that I know. And a couple of those are going to be people you've never heard of. So I'm excited about that. I make it a goal each year to become a better elk hunter. And because I think a lot of elk hunters get plateaued and they stop learning because they think they know everything. Egos soar high in the elk hunting world. And maybe they do have a strategy and an area and gear that works. And that's fine. If you're one of those people, no disrespect. But if you want to get better, like I do every year, even after 35 years of doing this, I want to get better every year. And I actually do get better every year. And it's crazy how much better you can get even after doing it for so long. Like you can get a lot better because people are always learning little things that can make you better. And why not? So, whether that be preparations, strategies, tactics, gear, whatever, we can all learn something. So last week, like I said, I had Corey Ford on the podcast. Corey is a friend of mine. He's with Angry Spike Productions. They have a YouTube channel that I highly recommend you check out and subscribe to. They hunt Roosevelts. I mean, they hunt all elk, I think, but Roosevelt's kind of their specialty, specifically in Oregon where I live. So I love talking about Roosevelts. Not a lot of people talk about them. They're an awesome subspecies, and they're still elk, but they do have some unique characteristics. And Corey and I had a rad conversation. I want to share a couple of the main things I took away. One, Corey and Shannon hunt mostly in coastal Oregon, and the public land of coastal Oregon hasn't been logged in a long time. They selectively thin and sometimes clear cut some public land, but for the most part, it's illegal. They can't do it anymore, especially on Forest Service. They absolutely can't. Some state land and BLM have different rules, but for the most part, if you're hunting public land, not private timber land where the public has access, but if you're hunting public land, you pretty much have one strategy that you can use, and that is culling. because you can't see very far, right? And the elk in the coastal Oregon mountains are fairly scattered and pockety. So Corey and Shannon have sort of morphed their strategy over the years, and they're very successful, into a strategy of which they move until they find fresh rut sign. Usually those are rub lines or something else. And then they try to locate that bull. If they can't locate that bull, they move on. There's no dilly-dallying. They don't sit in that canyon and stare at trees for 2 days wondering where they went. They keep moving. And oftentimes they're hunting new areas. They don't scout because scouting in those areas, unless you're just looking for last year's rubs, that can be effective. There are effective ways to scout in those areas, but for the most part, you can do a lot of your scouting during the season with your bugle tube. And it's a great strategy. They're very successful. You can watch their videos. They kill some great bulls. The downside to what they do, and it's not really solvable unless I guess there's a couple other things you could do. But for the most part, if the elk aren't talking or you can't get that bull to talk, it's going to be extremely challenging, obviously, because just wandering through the coastal Oregon elk woods, especially in some of the areas they're hunting that are very remote and rugged, you might bump into some elk, sure, but it's going to be some long days. And there's, if you're going between pockets of elk, there might be 6 in this canyon, and there might be 8 in the next, and 2 canyons over, and none in the canyon between. It's pretty sparse sometimes. So they rely heavily on calling, and it's very effective. They get super aggressive. He said they go 90% of the way so the bull can go 10% of the way. So they get as close as you possibly can. And in these coastal mountains, you can oftentimes, sometimes you can get 30, 40, 50 yards, and they can't see you. If you got the wind right, they can't smell you. They might be able to hear you, but they're used to a lot of noise because they're very loud in those jungles. So, had a really good conversation with him. We watched a couple of his favorite videos that they've shot, and we sort of reacted to them. I thought that was kind of fun. The one we watched, and I actually posted about this on my Instagram if you want to see it, is a bull from last year that came in, either last year or the year before, that came in frontal. Oftentimes in Oregon, your setups when you're calling, you only usually can pick 1 or 2 at most shooting lanes, and sometimes when you're in the younger stands of trees or they're super brushy old growth, you only have 1 shooting lane, and sometimes it can be 10 yards. In this case, that was the case. This bull was coming in through some what we call reproduction, which is like a young stand of timber that is just dense, and he was kind of on the edge of the older growth timber, and it's just super brushy, and all he could see was this one little shooting lane at like 10 or 15 yards, and this bull walked right into it, but he turned right at the last minute frontal, and Corey self-admittedly rushed the shot a little bit. Anyways, unfortunately, shoulder hit the bull, couldn't find it. Probably okay. In fact, I think he said somebody saw it not too long after that. So, anyways, you can see some of those videos if you watch the YouTube version in that episode. It's a fun podcast. I love talking about Roosevelts. Those guys are really good Roosevelt hunters. So, the next one I released this last week was Corey Jacobson, and it was a podcast that I recorded at Big Sky Total Archery Challenge last week. And I got to sit down with 4 or 5 people there and record podcasts. So that'll be the next several episodes. Corey, I really want to dig in. I know he is an aggressive caller, and we've talked about that before. But what I really wanted to dig in with him was, what if that's not working? What do you do when that's not working? Because in the country that he hunts mostly, you can see they're heavily dependent on water. Roosevelt country, there's water everywhere. But so Corey, it's a little bit easier for him to deploy different strategies when the calling's not working, which happens all the time, especially in the earlier seasons. He was telling me last year in Idaho that they got up into this area and they were seeing lots of bulls, but they just wouldn't give them the time of day with the calls. And I said, well, you're like the world elk calling champion. When they're not talking, do you just move off because that's how you prefer to hunt them? And he's like, no. I mean, he killed one by sitting on stand 2 years ago. I think one of his guys, oh, John, his cameraman, they like last year he killed a great bull just by slipping in, not making a peep. Anyways, he basically told me that he's willing to do anything it takes to get one. He would prefer to call because it's more fun for him, getting that interaction, but he will do what it takes, which I think, and I've been saying this for a long time, is the best strategy, is being more flexible in what you use to get it done. Like I've said in the past, it's similar to MMA, which is mixed martial arts fighting. If you're a fan of that and UFC, what you'll see is the people that are just good at one thing usually get their ass kicked. And I don't think elk hunting's any different, because if you just have one strategy that you're using and you go into the woods with that strategy, it might work a lot. And over the course of time, on average, it might work every year. But every day changes. One day they're talking, the next day they're not. One day heat comes in or storms come in, blah, 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 blah. I think it's better to be pretty good at several different strategies so you can deploy whatever works best. And anyways, so Corey and I talked a lot about that. You should check out that episode. I would like to thank GoHunt.com for sponsoring this podcast. GoHunt.com is such a great hub for all of us hunters, whether you need gear out of their gear shop or you need to do research, which you should be doing, and you should be doing it now, and you should have been doing that for a long time this year. I've been trying to do more and more this year. The one thing cool that they added recently was historical imagery on their mapping program on the desktop version. The couple of the areas that I'm thinking about going to this year have changed because of burns, and so I like looking at the historical imagery and seeing how those areas have changed, and it's just kind of it's a smart way to scout. And so highly recommend going checking that out. If you need any gear, get in their gear shop. I just place an order myself today. I'm constantly thinking of things I need to upgrade or change or whatever. So go to gohunt.com, join, become an insider, have access to all these tools that I just described. All right. So July 4th is on Tuesday, and I just wanted to share a bit of a story with you guys about this, because we've spent the last 10 minutes talking about elk hunting, and that's a freedom that we have to do here. And I have been very blessed. Most of you have been blessed with many freedoms that we are privileged to have in the United States of America. And I know that we all like to forget, or don't like to forget, but we just tend to forget that a lot of things had to come into place for us to have those freedoms. And one of them was what happened in 1776 with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The ability to create the country how we want it to be created. And I was thinking about this because I was with some clients last week from Europe, and they flew in to meet me, and we were talking about some business things. And one of the things they were telling me about, I was picking their brain just about politics and how things work where they're from, and what they think about America and all these things. I'm just curious. And my main takeaway was they have businesses all over Europe, and they get to travel a lot. They've been to almost all the European countries, maybe even all of the European countries. Very intelligent individuals. And the thing they told me was they are so jealous a lot of times about America, because people think that America is always getting compared to Europe, and there's a lot of people in America that would like to make America more like Europe. And there are some things in Europe that may be better or maybe not. But what they said is we have such a great country that we should be so proud of, because so many other countries around the world have so many problems, from corruption to poverty to hunger to whatever. We are so fortunate. And I think sometimes we're a little bit spoiled because we live here and we get to wake up and have air conditioning and clean water and sanitation. And we can walk down to the grocery store and get basically any food we want. Food is abundant. We have a constitution and a Bill of Rights. And for the most part, our government sticks to it. We have the freedom to go elk hunting. We have the freedom to have guns. We have the freedom to have our own money, to marry who we want. Just so many things that I think it's easy to take for granted, but I think we should probably take more recognition of that. And I think July 4th is a great day to celebrate that. So I hope you all do that, and I will try to do that as well, because what a great damn country do we live in. So I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful week, and we will be back this week. Oh, Dan Staton is the next one up on the podcast. He is a public land master, and I sat with him in Big Sky and talked to him. You should check that out. It's actually out right now alongside this one. So check that out. Have a great week, and looking forward to putting out some more content for you guys. Cheers.